I'm John Batchelor, Gordon Chang, my colleague and co-host of Forbes.com, and we're very pleased to welcome Sarah Cook, Senior Research Analyst for Freedom on the Net and East Asia at Freedom House. Sarah, very good evening to you. Gordon and we're exchanging thoughts about the First Lady's embassy to China. In the course of this, and it's a puzzle why the White House wanted the First Lady to go, and there's an answer. In the course of this, however, the First Lady made a speech, a presentation to the Chinese people who were very sophisticated, and she talked about internet freedom. And I puzzle about this. We will recall in the embassy by Xi Jinping to the United States, what was that, a year ago, Gordon, in California?
In June.
Right. That was the moment when we were told the President of the United States was going to raise the hacking charges, the theft, the cyber surveillance, the cyber spying, the outright, the intellectual property rights snatching being done by the Chinese government through their the cyber warriors, right? The President was going to talk about that, and then all of a sudden, this fellow named Snowden. Okay, so we go into a completely different universe. And ever since we've been talking about this fellow named Snowden, who's in Moscow. But that's a subplot. Okay, fine. That was last year.
By the way, who went to Hong Kong and dumped everything on the Chinese.
Another subplot. Stop, Gordon. I'm trying to get to Sarah. So the First Lady goes to China. Sarah, and she talks about internet freedom. Now, is the White House on last year's schedule? Have they fallen behind? Is this irony not supposed to be obvious? Good evening to you, Sarah.
Hi, good evening. No, I mean, I think in a lot of ways it was talking about an issue that a lot of Chinese people care about. When John Kerry went to China, I think it was last month, he met with a number of journalists and bloggers, and what they were saying was like, look, the internet situation is getting worse, the censorship is getting worse, and we want the United States to help us, help Chinese people who care about freedom. So, I mean, I think what Mrs. Obama was doing was partly, really responding to and raising these issues to try to encourage the Chinese government to listen to what their own people want from that perspective.
Yeah, this is an issue which resonates with Chinese people, especially the netizens, the people who are on the internet every single day. And I think that it's important that she did so. Now, should she have done other things while she was in China? Of course. Were there things that she did that she shouldn't have done? Absolutely, John. But this is one issue, one of a number.
We all have the same mother. Our mothers told us the same story. People in glass houses. We know the end of this story.
Our glass is a little bit different than theirs. John, look, the Chinese government takes information, and it doesn't do this just for regular surveillance on other countries. All countries do that. What the Chinese do is they take intellectual property and they give it to their companies so they can compete. That's a really big difference. The Obama administration stresses this, and for once, it is absolutely right. That's the critical difference.
Sarah, I come to you because this is your story all the time. You follow this story. I understand that the Chinese authorities are brutes. I get it. However, it seems to me that there's no longer a sharp distinction between the cyber surveillance done by China on its citizens and the cyber surveillance that is capable and possible and likely on American citizens. It's not a sharp distinction.
Well, first of all, I think, surveillance is just one of the types of restrictions on internet freedom, and there's a whole range of other ones that individual Chinese internet users face, which is the reason why China is rated deeply not free on our Freedom on the Net report. And the United States is, dropped down in the free category, but is still considered to be free.
Dropped down.
But I think the other thing is, even in terms of surveillance, there's still a difference in terms of talking about, massive collection of metadata and things like that, I think we all are concerned about as U.S. citizens. And what happens in China, where it's really looking at systematically at the content, and where people where what's censored is not just about things that we would consider, real national security, but issues related to public health, environmental pollution, police brutality, things that sometimes have a life or death situation for millions of people, and this is what the Chinese government is quashing or punishing people for posting. So there's still a very big difference between the challenges to internet freedom there and I think what we're having here, which has come out and, has really promoted a better public debate about how the U.S., as a leading democracy, can do better in this area.
Yeah, there's a big difference here, John, as Sarah points out, because, if you're in China, you hit a keyboard, you type something in that they don't like, they come for you. Or, they'll do something to make your life extremely unbearable.
There are also workarounds in China, and everybody knows them. For example, when you get a SIM card, you can go to register for the SIM card, and they ask for your passport at the door. I've read this recently, okay? Or you can go across the street to the kiosk, and you can say to the guy, you got a SIM card for me, and you pay him some money, and you get a SIM card. It works the same way, all right? Now, that means there are workarounds in China, and everybody knows them. So pointing to, and I'm aware that the Chinese people live under a dictatorship that is ruthless. I'm aware of that, and that the American people don't. I just no longer think that we have any right to officially preach to the Chinese about violating people's rights by spying on them with cyber tools.
Oh, but we have never said that the Chinese shouldn't use surveillance for what governments use surveillance for. We do that, they do that. Everybody recognizes that. But what we're talking about are different things that the Chinese government does, which are just completely beyond the pale.
Sarah, back to the First Lady's mission. Now that I've exercised my disdain.
First Amendment right to say whatever you want, regardless of what the NSA will say.
NSA, all of you. All right, I've exercised it for the moment. God, I did a book.
Do you feel better?
No, I don't. I did a book this afternoon that alarmed me again. We were talking about China, we were talking about Cuba, and we were talking about Russia. It's a new book, and it alarmed me again that this is not the country that I used to think it was. It's just not. We've had bad decisions made these last years.
I won't deny that, but that's why we have Sarah Cook, that's why we have John Batchelor, and that's why we have others.
Sarah, why was the First Lady there? Why did she go to China? What was the payoff?
Well, I think part of it was an effort to make up for the fact that she wasn't able to join the summit in California, and that was perhaps perceived as a snub on the Chinese side. I think otherwise it's an attempt by the U.S. government to show, a type of goodwill, vis-a-vis China and vis-a-vis the Chinese people. I think what's unfortunate is that given the trajectory of issues like freedom of expression, rule of law, crackdowns on activists, I'm not sure this is the best timing. I think there's a real question of whether you do these kinds of gestures at a time when there's, a certain degree of promise, especially on the political and human rights side, or you just kind of go and do it when it's not clear that, what kind of positive impact it may have.
This is absolutely a critical point that you raised, Sarah, and I think it's important that we just not leave it. The point is, we think good relations are friendly relations. Well, that's not the point, because what we've been doing is we've been legitimizing a government in China that is increasingly delegitimizing itself. And as you say, there is a prolonged attack on civil society. We should not be anywhere near this disaster. I agree with you 100%.
Sarah, was the First Lady's mission embassy, was it considered a success? Did she get good reviews in China?
Well, so here you have an interesting example, because there was not much coverage in some of the main state-run media, especially of her speech, for instance, mentioning internet freedom. I think other aspects of her trip did get coverage. In terms of the internet, people were very positive, and you saw a lot of netizens praising, two things. One, her comments actually about freedom of expression, but two, I think her general very relaxed demeanor and just approachability and friendliness, which was actually contrasted quite a bit with the more stiffer demeanor of China's First Lady.
And very interesting thing, her speech on internet freedom was heard by, maybe 100 Chinese people in China. So that is an important point for us to remember. Mrs. Obama can say these things, but, at the end of the day, the Chinese government is going to use all of its power to prevent her message from getting out.
Sarah Cook is Senior Research Analyst for Freedom on the Net and East Asia at Freedom House. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. I'm John Batchelor.